So, welcome everyone to our November digital drop-in. I am so excited to have you all here today to talk about the future of YouTube. And we're going to be talking about some features inside of YouTube, some trends, and some strategies. At the end, I am going to take a little bit of time just to get onto our channel and share some things with you about the YouTube analytics. But I want to encourage everyone to ask questions during this webinar. Feel free to use the chat, but more importantly, if you'd like to have questions answered during the conversation, you can also put them in the Q&A feature, which is really helpful for me in just keeping track of things. But of course, I will watch the chat as well and make sure that I go ahead and try to grab any questions out of there. For those of you who are new to the JV Media Digital Drop-In, we will share a recording as well as my slide deck probably on Friday morning as usual. So look for an email that includes those things. If you didn't know, though, we do have a JV Media Institute Vimeo channel. And if you just Google JV Media Institute Vimeo, you will get the recordings of every single webinar that we have done since 2015. So you can always find them there and engage with the archives. We also have a JV Media Institute YouTube channel. So I am posting most things from the last 2 years up there as well. So if you want the full archive, Vimeo has that from 2015 on. And then the last couple of years, we've been posting to our YouTube channel as well. So you can always find the recordings there. But everyone who's registered will get an email that includes the slide deck as well as the recording of this webinar. So don't feel like you have to write everything down. And again, as we go along, feel free to drop questions into the Q&A or into the chat if you can't access the Q&A. I also just want to say really quickly, thank you to everyone who's been reaching out to myself, to Justin, and to the team in general. Your support means everything. And, at the end of the day, community is truly the answer to our problems. And so we are doing well here in Asheville as well as we can. In spite of everything that's happened, I think the Western North Carolina region, we are seeing progress. We are moving things forward. Again, it's hard. It is a lot of stress and a lot of sadness, different things going on still, even though we're past a month out. But yeah, Amy, hashtag Asheville Strong. I just am so grateful for all the people in my network and for all of the positive vibes and just, I don't know, for the good thoughts and notes. It's what keeps everybody going, gives us good energy that we need for rebuilding and recovery. So I really, really appreciate it. Everyone's thoughts and just all of the outpouring of good messages we've gotten. And Omi, yeah, I'm glad y'all are okay in McDowell County as well. Again, it's not just Asheville that's been impacted. It's really quite a distance around us as well. So glad that you're here to join us today. So I wanted to talk about YouTube today because as we know in the world of digital technology, everything is changing and shifting all the time. So YouTube is not exempt from these things. And on October 15th, YouTube made an announcement about how we could expect over 24 improvements in YouTube, and that they've been doing a lot of studies and research and feedback with their own creators, as well as viewers. And so the goal is for them to update YouTube in a way that actually impacts every device that you're using to access it. So whether it's, being on your computer, whether it's being on your television, whether it's being on the YouTube mobile app, they are going to be making these updates that they see as really positive and really important for both viewers and creators, mostly because they feel like these are the things that people have been asking for, right? So they will be including some features that they know have been on the request list from the people who use YouTube the most. So having fine-tunable playback speed, having more responsive browsing, especially on phones. If you can see my little camera view here, switching your phone like this on the YouTube app, giving that more kind of flexibility, right, on different sizes of devices, simplifying their interface to a certain extent. So we're going to talk about some things today. You can click on these links when you get the slide deck and read more about all of this. But their goal is really to listen to the people who love their website, their app, and their communities and really provide for them what they need. And we're going to talk about why they're doing that. But everything we talk about today, remember, it's in motion. It's not static. It could be changing. So again, most of you know me. This slide deck is like an ebook. You can share it with anyone you'd like. There's lots of information to dive into here. So we're going to move pretty quickly through the beginning part, which is just talking a little bit about what makes YouTube special. Why are we still talking about this site, right? It's been around since 2005, which is quite a long time. It's been wildly successful since Google bought it. And it has continued to really sit at the very top of the list in a number of different ways. And I think that's really what makes YouTube super unique. 52% of internet users use YouTube at least once a month. So again, that's 52% of the internet users in the world, which is billions of people, right? So YouTube, again, sits at the top of the list in many different ways when it comes to digital technology. And it's something that's really spanning the globe at this point, right? People spend an average of 48.7 minutes per day watching YouTube content. So again, this is across all countries, all devices, right? And that's still a very high number, a very large amount of time per day for people to spend watching this particular platform. So again, it's sort of dominant in a lot of ways. And again, what makes it, I think, truly different from maybe some of the other social media sites out there is that its connection into these other forms of media. So YouTube is driving television, right, as part of how it is impacting the world. There's an average of 1 billion hours of content per day watched through televisions, right? So not through phones, not through computers, but just through people's TVs. So it's become an integral part of television, especially smart TVs. And there's over 8 million paid subscribers to YouTube TV right now. So people that are willing to pay for the content they're getting there. YouTube's also driving music. So YouTube Music has over 100 million paid subscribers. They are certainly a decent competitor in the market, right? When we're looking at Spotify and Apple Music. They've made a name for themselves there. They have also continued to drive themselves basically as a social media site, right? So it shows up in a lot of different ways, especially around community building and fan bases, where YouTube is one of the most dominant social media sites. It actually permeates into our adult audiences at maybe the highest level, only really comparable to, let's say, Facebook. Which has very high sort of saturation into the adult market in our country and many other countries. But YouTube is really still driving social media and how it works and influencing it. Right now, YouTube Live is more popular than live streaming on Facebook or Instagram. So even the last few years, we've seen YouTube Live is kind of dominating in this world. And Shonda, I see your comment there. You have to admit you leave dog and cat TV on for your 2 dogs and cats. Absolutely. So again, the way that YouTube is used is this very, very broad, powerful way, right? So sometimes when they see those numbers of how much content is consumed, we want to remember that long form content and music, things like that, right, are impacting those kind of numbers of how much content is consumed, especially because there's some music that is meditation music that goes on for many hours. People are listening to it when they sleep, right? So this is what makes YouTube really unique, is just sort of global recognition and use across the entire world. The fact that it is still, when it comes to monthly active users and when it comes to time spent on site, we see just billions of people basically present there using the system. It is outshining in a lot of ways many of the other sites, and I think it's because of its diversification in a lot of ways. You can see YouTube does have a really strong, solid audience from 25 to 44, right? So if you look at those numbers here in the center, those are like the 2 biggest pieces of the pie, although lots of people are watching YouTube across many, many age groups and spectrums. But you can see that 25 to 44 market is really, really strong. And then you've got this sort of 18 to 24 and 45 to 54 markets. They are somewhat comparable in how active they are. But that's sort of, millennial group is really strong there. Then some of the older Gen Zers, some of the younger Gen Xers are kind of in that 25 to 45 range. There are lots of different videos that are popular on YouTube. This is just sort of, as of January of this year, kind of what are the most popular videos of all times. I thought this was an interesting thing to take a look at when we're talking about trends, right? You can see how some of the trends that we're going to talk about towards the end of this call are very much related to what is at the top, right, of the list when it comes to what is the most powerful, kind of most watched video content that exists on the platform. And you'll see a lot of this is very niche marketed, right? A lot of it is kid oriented, a lot of it is music oriented. And so again, we're going to talk about why we think that is, but I just always think it's interesting. I'm a big fan of the song Despacito, so I'm very glad to see that sitting at number 2. And I think if you're going to throw some music onto something, it's always good to look at what's still really popular, even if it's been around for a while, right? Leading countries based on YouTube audience size. So you can see the US is pretty strong, but India is actually ahead of us. But you can sort of see when we look at the global perspective, where is YouTube really gained a lot of traction? India, Brazil, Indonesia are really kind of at the very, very top alongside of the US. But I think this is important, especially if you are interested in reaching people that are outside of our national area. There's, of course, many other stats that you can look at around YouTube. They put out a lot of great information about themselves. And of course, I just want to put in a reminder that one other way that they've truly diversified is they are the second largest search engine owned by the largest search engine. And so really people still use YouTube just to go and search things in the search bar. And also YouTube is fully integrated into Google search results. So when I'm searching on google.com or in my Google app, I'm potentially seeing YouTube results there. Now, there's been some algorithm changes as usual, because there's always algorithm changes. That'll never stop. So I want to just highlight some of the key things about the YouTube algorithm that we want to be paying attention to, right? So basically, when it comes to YouTube, I think it all comes down to how do people discover the content? If you're trying to grow a channel, if you're trying to get certain videos to get more exposure, be seen by more people, it really, the game that you're trying to play is how do I become more discoverable on the system, right? And there's different algorithms inside of YouTube. So it's not just one algorithm, right? It's very much like Instagram, Facebook, these other types of companies where you've got multiple algorithms that are controlling different parts of the system. So these different parts of the algorithm are different ways that people then can discover you. So recommended content, which we usually find in your home or your suggested videos, trending videos, which are things that are really popular, and then the YouTube search bar are kind of the 3 top ways that people discover content. Now, this doesn't discount the other tools that we have where, for instance, I can look at my history. That's part of the algorithm, right? I can look at my playlists. I can, create my experience in some ways. But when we're talking about people just sort of discovering your content without you already being in their sphere, right? Or maybe discovering new content that you've put out, even if they're already subscribing, right? That's what we're really talking about here. And so that's where these 3 kind of buckets come in: recommended, trending, and search, right? That's how people are finding you. So these things are governed by different principles, and I've outlined them here just so you can kind of understand, because I think getting into different areas of the algorithm accomplishes different goals. Right, so the homepage and suggested videos. So that's when I get to my app or I go to youtube.com, I'm automatically on my home. A lot of times the suggested videos are mixed into my experience, but they're especially present in that area. And a lot of this is governed by user behavior, right? So what shows up here? So the signals that are most kind of commonly known are when I go to my own homepage, and think about your own YouTube if you have one. When I go to my own homepage or I look at what's suggested, it's based on what I've watched and what I don't watch. It's based on what I'm typing into the search bar. It's based on what I have given a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Sometimes YouTube will ask me, do I like this content or am I not interested? And I'm giving direct feedback, right? So all of that stuff is a big part of kind of what signals to the AI and to the algorithm, basically what it is that should show up on your homepage and your suggested videos. It's also looking at things that are more detailed, right? So when we say, what do they watch? That's a very broad way of talking about it, right? They're looking at, what do I skip over? How long do I watch something, right? All the minutia they're looking at, right? And so a lot of times this is going to be directly related. What shows up here for the user is going to be directly related to what they're already engaging with, right? So this homepage and suggested videos, it's not necessarily going to be the greatest place for you to get in front of new people in the algorithm, right? And again, if we just dig a little deeper into the homepage videos, I think we just want to remember a big goal of Google overall is to provide relevancy in their search results, right? And to really personalize the recommendations they give each viewer. And so to me, again, the subscriptions that we have, the things that we've been commenting on, the things that we've been engaging with, all of those things will kind of control this homepage area and this recommended area. So I'm going to see things that I've probably already touched before, right? Or something very related to things that I've already viewed before or been in contact with before, right? So it's definitely going to have a different flavor than some of the other parts of the algorithms, right? And so again, I've just given you a little more detail, right, on suggested versus homepage. They're not exactly the same, but they have sort of that similar focus. They're there to, that part of the algorithm is there to engage your existing audience, your current subscribers, the people that have already watched videos, right? The people that are into things that are maybe similar to you and connected to you in some way. Trending videos is really where you have the opportunity for your content to show up and be seen by completely new people. Of course, it's a catch-22 because you have to have enough engagement for the video to be sort of trending, right? It's not necessarily going to just magically be up there. So it feels a little bit difficult. How do we make our way into this? We're going to talk about that. But how do we bust into this algorithm, right? A lot of times this is about really promoting our YouTube video in other places, putting it in our newsletters, putting it on our other social media sites, and ramping up that view count as much as possible, right? And doing it quickly rather than weeks after we've posted it to YouTube, right? So really having kind of a launch for different videos, that perspective, or a campaign perspective, where we really want to get this video to go further, faster, and even employing help from your friends, your colleagues, your own customers, right? How do we make sure that we kind of position the video as best we can, right? If we can make it into the trending feed, which is still pretty personalized on some levels, right? Especially based on which country you're in, and it's moving quick. So those trending videos are refreshing all the time. So you don't just have one opportunity to potentially get up there, right? You can get up there at different points based on how your video is doing. But essentially, to me, this is where trending videos, I might see completely new things as a user, right? Things that I'm not familiar with. And then you've got really the YouTube SEO part of this conversation, which has to do with maybe you want to be more discoverable inside of search, right? You want people to type in certain keywords, certain information, and you want your video to show up in the results there. And this is where we really have to understand optimization and what that means, right? Especially with the title description and the video content itself. So this is where, as an SEO expert, a lot of times I'm doing keyword research and I'm working with people to develop sort of a more campaign approach to how we do YouTube, really listening at first to what the audiences want. How can we talk about things that we can reflect in our title, description, and the content itself, and make sure that if we want to be found, we are speaking the language of the people that we want to find us, right? And again, engagement always matters. So the more that you can share this other places, get people who already support you to watch the video, to share the video, the more that you can activate that network, the better you're going to do in that part of the algorithm as well. And one thing I just wanted to highlight is interaction, is increasingly important. This is true on all social media platforms, all algorithms, all search systems, right? The more that there is community and interactivity and engagement and conversation, the better your content's going to do. And YouTube's creating a community. Well, they have created it. I haven't seen it on everybody's platform or channel yet. But you may see this if you have a channel, right? That you have a community tab, and that's allowing you to start to create more interactions with your subscribers. So the way that a lot of other social media, I can do polls, I can, add text to things, I can put up images and animated GIFs. They're really kind of creating this more interactive space for people. And if you've been doing live streaming on YouTube, you may have seen that in how the chat becomes really interactive now, right, when you're doing live. And so we're going to see, I think, those types of features continue developing. So let's get into actually how we can accomplish some goals, right? Because I think, again, when we look at the algorithm, there's certain things that we want to pay attention to when we're strategizing that have to do with these different things that we want to accomplish, right? Whether that's being seen by more people and getting more quote unquote views, maybe that's increasing how long people are watching our videos. So we've got subscribers, but we want them to watch more of the videos. How do we strategize around that? Maybe we just want to be found in the search more frequently, right? And that would be a different type of strategy. So that's why I want to talk about the algorithm first, and how do we really kind of understand how we potentially can be discovered, and then really think about how that relates to our business goals. And a lot of those goals, I think, come down to kind of two different things, right? One is growing your subscribers. And the other we're going to talk about in a minute is basically increasing kind of engagement with content so that, again, it can move its way up the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm was really designed so each individual viewer sees the content that they find most satisfying. It's kind of the word that YouTube would use, right? So I do want to say, even though we're going to talk a little bit about optimization, we're going to talk about strategy, I do think it's important that we don't play games when we think of people first, right? So we really want people to enjoy our video content. We really want them to see it as valuable. We really want them to, comment on it, share it, and actually participate in it in a deeper way, because that's going to help us win, right? And achieve more success. But I think we want to put people first at all times, right? Instead of being gimmicky, instead of necessarily, trying to think more from the brand, really starting from how are we going to make the audiences happy? One way that I think we can really kind of up our game when it comes to subscribers, reaching new people and engaging existing subscribers, if we have any, even if it's a small number, is to use as many of YouTube's tools to your advantage as you can. So I definitely feel like a lot of people, they kind of post their video and that's it. There's not a lot of thought around how do we title it? How do we describe it? Are there links in the description? Did we fill out all the information when we posted the video, right? And then did we continue to use whatever tools are there? Things like end cards, right? Can I tell people if they make it to the end of the video to subscribe to our channel or to watch another video, right? So taking the time to really invest in the tools, I think, is really key, because when you do that, you expand and diversify the ways in which someone might be able to discover you, whether that's an existing subscriber or somebody new. I think we can think about some key things like vertical and horizontal video both have value. So create videos in different orientations, right? YouTube Shorts has been growing, so that's a more vertical approach. And especially for anybody who's selling products and services, educating people, showing them how things work, YouTube Shorts is actually really growing in that space. And people are seeing great engagement and success, right, from using that format. I think you want to think carefully about whether or not you have a business to consumer sort of message or a business to business message, or maybe your brand spans both, right? And so really understanding that those are two very different audiences, and there's ways that you can engage people in different ways. And so are there tools that might be more valuable to, let's say, people who own businesses than to the general public? And how can we activate those tools when we're using them? And again, YouTube's Creator Studio has a ton of different stuff to play with. So if you have questions about which tools, let me know specifically what tools you're interested in. But the truth is, like, we really want to take our time. We don't just want to throw a video on YouTube, hope that it does something. We really want to look at, who are we making this for? Why are we making it? And what do we want it to do for people? And how can we look at what YouTube is giving us and use those tools? We're going to talk about YouTube Insights and using those to make decisions about your future content. Really looking and evaluating and analyzing if you're attracting the right audience. So if you are leaving your comments on and you're engaging with folks and they're saying things to you, are you attracting the right people, or are these not exactly the audience that you wanted? To me, then we need to go back and kind of look at, all right, how are we presenting the content? How are we titling it? What are we talking about? Can we talk about it in a way that would attract the right people to us, right? Think about going live as well as YouTube Shorts, right? How can you use the live feature to be more in the moment with people? And I will say there are some limitations depending on the size of your channel, where you're at in your channel development, about which tools you can use. Some sort of unlock as you grow and, let's say, cross over about 1,000 subscribers, right? So again, not everything will be available, but how can you pay attention, not rush yourself, and choose to use as many of the tools as possible to diversify how you're putting out the content? And especially if you're doing YouTube ads, one of the studies I've been watching for the last couple of years is that skippable ads perform better. So I already know that people who are using the internet prefer to have choices, right? They like to turn on the sound of a music or video. They like to be able to skip something or not. And so just if you're making decisions about how to promote videos through YouTube, which is typically done on Google Ads, you'll have some options in how you do the advertising, and skippable ads tend to be the strongest. And so they can be a great way to get more people to view your video and connect with it. I also think it's important to think like a viewer and not like a creator. So again, when you're actually making the content, right? The lights, the camera, all of that, like, I want you to be the creator, right? I want you to be the brand. But when we're sort of strategizing, I want us to sort of step back a little bit, not think so much about what we want, and think a little bit more about how we can pay attention and learn lessons from what we're observing. So again, when you're using YouTube, take note for yourself. What content do you like? Right? How do the thumbnails make you feel? Are you watching short versus long stuff? Like, what can you learn just from your own preferences? I think that's a great way to get in the mindset of thinking like a viewer, right? But then you really want to start to stand in your audience's shoes, and you want to review content that's maybe focused on the different niche audiences that you're connecting with. And you really want to think about those different specific groups, right? You really want to think about, what do they want and need? What kind of stuff does it seem like they're engaging with, or they're paying attention to, or that's maybe going viral around that niche conversation, right? And I think it's a really good idea to take notes on some of this stuff, right? And if you're watching videos and you're kind of in this process of observation and paying attention, make note of things that got you excited, right? Was there things that you liked about a video? Was it how it looked? Was it the shot? Was it the sound? Was it the music that they used? Was it just the topic area, right? Was it that the person doing it was really charismatic? Really make note of those things. I think this can really help you produce content that is going to be stronger and build more subscribers, specifically when you can sort of put some of this into your workflow, right? And have time for this. I don't think you need to spend 8 hours on this. You could spend 1 hour on it and learn some things, right? And really figure out, okay, if what I'm doing isn't quite getting me where I want to go, how can I take what I learn and put into practice some of those things to make my content stronger, right? The next thing, and I will say too, with subscriber bases, I want to encourage you again to tell people through your other channels, right? And have YouTube on your website, and make sure people know that you're building this channel out for them to engage with. So the folks that really love and support you already, love your products, love your services, maybe people who've been coming to your destination for a long time, all of those people, we can actually continue to remind them that YouTube is a resource for them. But we actually have to bang that drum, right? It's not going to happen on its own in a lot of ways. So again, as we're thinking about that more social aspect, community aspect, which I think has to do with subscribers, it really does kind of go back to some very basic social media strategy. Now, when it comes to driving engagement, there's a few things I wanted to share that I think are really valuable. And again, this conversation could be a lot of hours long. But the first thing I want to focus on, and if you've ever attended my YouTube webinars before, because I've done a couple of them in the past, even with some other YouTube experts, niche audiences and messages are really important. So being specific has a lot to do with being relevant, and being relevant has a lot to do with whether or not you succeed in the algorithms. This is true in almost every situation in which we're optimizing, right? So I really think it's important for you to realize, if you studied the most successful YouTube channels, you'd find out that their fan base and their financial security was really created by having a very tight niche focus first, having very clear takeaways, value, and things associated with their channel, right? So that whole principle of if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one, it really reigns true in the YouTube world, right? So to me, it's very important that even if we're going to have many, many different types of markets looking at our content later, that we start with something very specific. And there's many different ways we could approach this. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to limit it to one product, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to limit it to just one audience. Like, I want you to sort of brainstorm, what does it mean to niche down in the beginning and produce a lot of content that really feeds into a very specific need, want, passion, question, issue, problem, right? How do we get those people activated and then start creating content for the rest of our markets, right? So identifying 1 to 3 core markets as the bread and butter, I think is really, really important. And you can open new markets if you want. I don't want to deter you from that. But I think those first markets you choose should be something you already have traction with, right? It should be something, it's a place where you've already uniquely served these people. You know what you have to offer is good for them, going to help them, going to get them where they need to be, right? And so how, if we already understand 1 or 2 sort of very specific segments of our larger market, how can we make YouTube a focus on them first? Really generate some great subscriber base, some great interactivity, some great loyalty to the brand. And then as we move forward over time, really strategize how we build that out and we sort of grow right beyond that. And it's hands down, when you look at the people that are multimillionaires from YouTube, this is part of how they've done it. It's also a great idea to right now really be intentional with your thumbnails. And I'm working on this myself because I feel like my thumbnails are kind of lacking and I need to go back to a lot of my most recent content from the last couple of years and just amp up our thumbnail game, make them clearer, make them simpler, right? The key things that we want to do with a thumbnail is evoke an emotional response because it is the very first impression that we make, and it's literally what drives the click through. We want to show what the video is about as simply and clearly as possible. That might be simple text. It could also be the expression on the face of the person. However you design that thumbnail, we want that emotional thing to be, kind of reflected, both the visual and the text. And we want to set the right expectations. So when they do click through, we want them to be happy with what they got at the end of it, right? We want them to feel like, yes, this is what I needed. I clicked, I got what I needed. I got what I wanted. So really putting more effort into your thumbnails, really thinking it out. I do think, there's obviously a clickbait question we could ask here. I won't get into a deep thing about emotional authenticity, but I do think, we want to be fun, creative. We maybe don't want to be manipulative and clickbaity. And to me, there's a fine line between those things. And sometimes you'll see clickbait still works, but I think if we look at the future of YouTube and Google, we know that they don't value that in a lot of ways. So short form video has also typically been really strong over the last few years. That means 30 seconds or less, right? But the truth is we're seeing views on these shorter videos are decreasing right now. This is just a trend we're seeing right now. And we're seeing not just on YouTube, but on a number of other platforms, that 1 to 2 minute range is just doing well. So if you've been doing shorter videos, maybe do a minute, maybe do 90 seconds, right? And I would test that on YouTube and Instagram, right? Again, we don't know if this is a change in behavior. We don't know if it has something to do with all the media that's been going on over the last year, which has been pretty intense for everyone, I think, especially in our country and our culture. But I just think it's a good time to think in that 1 minute realm, right? As we go into the end of the year, beginning of the new year, 1 to 2 minutes. How can we create some content that is really useful, really exciting, gets people motivated and stimulated? And again, we can always go back to short form, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, but it seems like people are a little overwhelmed is kind of what I've been reading about. And that's why they might be moving a little towards longer form at this point. Of course, calling 1 minute longer form is kind of funny. There's also some popular content frameworks you can use, Q&A videos, collaborations, behind the scenes videos, and meet and greets are all really trending right now for improving engagement. Like I said, getting people more active and excited. So Q&A videos, that's something that actually here, dealing with our crisis and the hurricane, I've talked to a lot of different people about. And my suggestion was, if you've done a webinar, if you've done a longer form video, where you've answered a bunch of questions about what's going on with your location, with your destination, with your business, take that, chop it into Q&A. So single question and answers, right? And then take those shorter videos and promote them out so that people can sort of watch the longer thing if they want to, but they also have the ability to get a very direct answer to the question they care about. If you created a number of Q&A videos, this could even be taking your FAQ and doing it. So you don't necessarily have to be in a hurricane disaster to utilize this, right? I can take my FAQs, I can turn them into Q&A videos, I can populate my channel with these. That makes the title of every video a question that we know people are asking. These things can then be repurposed into my website, and they can be included on my FAQ page. They can be used to send out to clients when they are emailing and asking questions, or shared through chat if they are asking specific questions, right? So Q&A videos have YouTube value, but they also have all this other value, right? And it can, again, drive up views overall on your channel, which is really strong. Collaborations, of course. We know most of you have probably talked about this in some realm, right? Really connecting with influencers or other YouTubers, and really bringing audiences together. I think, as we've seen with things like Instagram and TikTok, places where you can stitch, right, or react to videos with another video. We're seeing that, of course, being really strong on YouTube Shorts as well. So it's not always about hiring an influencer. Sometimes it's really about having those exchanges, right? Responding to a piece of content that is related to yours, being able to, kind of engage with that. And basically, like I said, kind of bonding with other creators, whether you know them or not, especially when they have audiences that are similar to yours, right? Behind the scenes videos, I think that's always been popular, but I just want to put it out there again. This is increasing in popularity, especially if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're somebody in the creative fields. Showing people what's going on behind the scenes is a really great way to sort of tell them a deeper story about what you do and how you do it. And then meet and greets. This is where we get YouTube kind of colliding with that live event piece, right? Which we know is really growing as well. So holding special live events or even broadcasting in-person events, really kind of bringing your followers and subscribers together. And when you can mirror sort of the online with the in-person experience, it can create an even more powerful discussion and get people more excited. For some bonus homework, I did include a big trend that YouTube's been talking about, and they've shared a really big deep dive into this, is about what is fandom when we're looking at YouTube and how it works, and how you really build a community of people that are high engagers, right? And so I just put together kind of an overview of this. It's also in the resources. You can click and dig more deeply into this, but especially when we're looking at that younger generation, the sort of, older teenagers, 14 to 18, and then looking really at like those older Gen Zers, the millennials, especially maybe some young Gen Xers, but really looking at that under 44 kind of marketplace. Fandom is something that's really built over time. And I'm a Gen Xer, and I will say there's plenty of people my age that still have the fandom thing, right? It depends, it's sort of popular in different industries and different places. I'm in the tech world, so it's very popular there. But to me, I think the biggest thing about fandom is that fans aren't just consuming their favorite content, they're actually in conversation with it. So again, fans of different brands, of different influencers, of different people on YouTube, different companies on YouTube, they create content in response to your content, right? So they are a producer of video as well as somebody who's consuming the video. And so I just think it's great to kind of consider this perspective, because it's a little different than what I think a lot of other social media sites have created. It exists, especially I think on TikTok and Instagram as well, but the community here is really big on YouTube. And there's a lot of other creators that talk about building fandoms and what that means and how they are fans of other people. But I think the great thing is this just really focuses in on how can you combine forces with other people? How can you respond to other content? How can your brand be a fan of other brands, other people that share an audience with you and can potentially get you exposure to that audience, right? So again, we see with the younger markets that they are consuming content and also creating content regularly, and they see it really as a conversation, right? And so across YouTube, we see a lot of people are self-described fans of something, right? And so even if they are already creating their own content, they are kind of a fan of other people and participating as a fan while they build their own fan base, right? And so it's an interesting kind of back and forth. And so that's why they deep dove into this subject. So I'm not going to focus on this too much, but I think it's really unique and different. I think if you are a destination, there's something to really think about here in how people build fandoms, how you build that for your region. I think if you're a business or an organization, this can just be really helpful in kind of understanding the nature of subscribers, the nature of how people interact. Even if you're not going to build a big fandom for yourself, understanding how you can gain engagement, gain more exposure to new people and new potential subscribers through acting as a fan, as a brand, right, is, I think, a really unique strategy that we should all think more about and put into more practice, right? A good example for me is JB Media Institute. We have our own YouTube channel. You'll see that I am a fan of a lot of other people in our industry. Most sort of well known as Gary Vaynerchuk, right? So even though I'm creating content, I'm part of the fandom that Gary has built, which is quite a large number of people at this point. And I will say this does require that you sort of let go of sort of this old school way where I'm going to make content, nobody's going to touch it. Because when you start to engage in this world, again, people will take your content and make something new out of it. They'll take your content and react to it, right? So we want to be prepared for that. So I just dug a little bit into this sort of creator ecosystem, why it's important for our brands to be passionate about things and to have our own kind of fan excitement about stuff while we're also trying to create that for ourselves, right? And again, we'll see, it's important again to be really creative in this space and to understand the value of those niche markets, right? So before we wrap up, I want to go to our channel, and you should be able to see our channel right now on the screen. Please chat in and let me know if you don't see it. And again, please post any questions in the Q&A or the channel if you'd like to, so that I can answer them before we wrap up today. But if you're in your channel and you go up to the top, you'll see that you have the YouTube Studio. And the YouTube Studio, again, is kind of where all your tools are housed. It's lots of different pieces of information, right? So again, I've got information about the latest videos, the latest comments, right? All this different information. As I scroll through the left-hand side, you'll see I have analytics here. I just wanted to highlight this as a really important part of YouTube. Most of all, because I think you are able to really see out of all of the different content you're creating, what is really working, right? And so I think this is a great example of key moments of audience retention, right? So how many people are still watching after 30 seconds, right? So it's really digging deep into each piece of content and giving you as much detail as possible, right? And again, when you're a small channel, some things are not going to have that much data because you haven't built up enough content yet, or you haven't built up enough subscribers yet. That's okay. Again, as you use these tools, they'll, grow more and more. And you have the ability to sort of look at all of your content, some of your content. So again, you'll see I just changed that date up there and asked it to sort of look at our lifetime of content on YouTube. And we, like I said, started using Vimeo. So this is a little bit more just looking at the last few years. But again, I can start to dig in to a lot of these different areas. When I click see more, it's going to start boiling even more detail down, right? So where is our traffic coming from? What cities are they coming from? What are their ages? What are their genders, right? Are they a subscriber, right? So again, this is going to give me a lot of different information to play with, right? Again, thanks for being here, Kristen. I'm just going to go back to the main page here. And sorry, it's taking so long to load. Again, so when I click on content, here's all of my different videos, sort of organized by views. I can look at impressions. I can look at click through. I can see the average view duration, right, of my content. So I can see where do people, how long did they stay on average overall? Then I can see each video and really know kind of which video do people stay the longest at. So I can click through a lot of these. I can hide metrics, I can show metrics, right? So just similar to Google Analytics, I have a lot of drop downs that I can play with, right? I can adjust how I'm looking at the data. And so this is a really valuable place. Hey, thanks for being here, Kathy. This is a really valuable place to dig in to these things. So I feel like it's valuable in almost every way to really get familiar with your insights and analytics inside of YouTube. And that's always going to be available right in the YouTube studio, right? So again, if we go back just to this beginning point, I can click through these tabs. I can scroll down here, and as I start to click on things, it's going to dive more deeply into each piece of content and give me more and more data. And again, I can click through these tabs here to start to look at different things. And again, this is built for not only to track everything, but here you can see inspiration to also help me learn things. So Google has created a lot of different things here that we can play with. So the other thing I just want to mention, and again, feel free to drop some questions in the chat if you have any of them, or in the Q&A, and I'm glad to answer them. I'll stay for a few more minutes at the end. But I did just want to mention the future of search, and I've included this video in the slide deck that you can click on and watch. This is a year old, so we've kind of moved forward, but it does still give a vision of where Google is going with their overall search engine, which is going to really focus more on essentially, I think being more interactive, having their Gemini AI involved in it. I think we're going to see a lot of changes in search engines overall with the advent of Search GPT and with Bing growing and including more AI. We're going to see Google make that leap. And I think that is going to directly impact YouTube because YouTube is such a big part of the search engine world. So I do think it's important just to take a look at, watch this video. It's just a quick synopsis of the future that Google sees, where there's a lot more interactivity in the search results. And I think this is where, if you don't already have a YouTube channel, you're going to find that YouTube becomes more valuable going forward, that it will show up higher in the results as we go forward, that there will be a bigger integration of social media and search engines and AI all into one massive experience that we're all having. So I don't know how fast those changes are going to come. We're already on the path, but I do want us to just be aware of that whatever's happening with Google, I think will have a direct relationship to what's happening with YouTube. But in the meantime, good luck with your channels. I wish you the best. If you do have a channel, I'd love for you to share it with me. I'm glad to take a look at it and even subscribe and support you. So feel free to leave it in there. But I know it's right at 1 o'clock. So if you have to leave, thanks so much for joining us. I'll share the recording and the slide deck. Like I said, by Friday morning, look for an email from our newsletter, including all that information. But I'll stay here to answer some questions. And I hope the rest of you have a great day and a great rest of your week. And so Trinity, I see your question, how do they get that spike in views? So a spike in views can come from anything. It really, I think, most naturally, when you see a spike in views, it's because you've been promoting your own video, right? So you've actually been sending it out by email, you've been sharing it on your other channels. you have been, just like promoting it. And there's a point where there's sort of like a critical mass or a bunch of people look at it at once. The other thing that can happen is when, it gets shared by somebody else and that share goes to a number of people that then spikes up the views, right? I usually think it's driven by, activity, those spikes more than it is, let's say it kind of happens on its own naturally through the search feature or something of that nature. I think it's usually driven by the brand itself or the creator themselves, like really launching, very specifically pushing out videos and having real strategic focus on promoting them in many different ways and not just one day, right? But moving forward, continuing to promote them. Or like I said, that you get lucky enough that someone in your network with a strong following, this goes back to fandom, shares it with their people and it gets a spike of views because people trust that person, and they trust that they've recommended it. Yeah, and thanks so much. Hey, thanks for sharing these channels in here. I really appreciate it. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions. Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks, Pam. So glad you were here. Thanks, Omi. Yeah, and like I said, Trinity, I mean, again, the only other way I think that there's like spikes in views sometimes is if you are actually advertising. So sometimes you'll see that when you promote a particular video, it'll get a spike in views. But yeah, I think it has to do with kind of that launch and campaign perspective I was talking about, and really kind of taking a video and promoting it, rather than just posting it. I think there's kind of a difference in mindset there. But again, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm looking at the Q&A as well. So Amy, I see your question just on how to leverage fandom. So if you're a fan of someone else's channel, you should do content inspired by their channel, call that out directly and tag them. So yes, and you can dig more into the fandom piece. It is, I think, more also about using the tools that we have now as fans to directly respond to somebody's video. I do think we should always tag people when we're talking about them. And I do think we should always say when something is inspired by somebody else, right? Because the more that we do that, the more we're promoting a conversation with that other person. And especially if they have, or that other channel, and especially if they have a shared audience to us, it's really valuable to build a relationship with them, right? And to get their audience of people that are similar to the people I want to attract to pay attention to me. But I think the fandom piece is actually more about how do you, like, I want to take it one step deeper and just explain to y'all. So I think one is fandom means if you're going to be a fan of somebody, you're watching regularly, you're subscribed to their channel, you're commenting on their stuff, you're actually paying attention to what they're doing on a regular basis, right? If you're a fan, you're not just kind of like saying you're a fan. There's actual behavior and activity involved in that. So I think that's part of it, right? Identifying those influencers, those people that share your markets, those other brands that you respect, those other groups or voices out in the world that you feel are values aligned with you, and share your audiences and basically kind of really paying attention to them, using their content, responding to their content in different ways, right? Creating a video that's a direct response to another video. So I think it's even deeper than just that kind of like tagging them and calling them out. It's actually about paying attention to what they're saying and having a conversation with them, right? So hopefully that helps just kind of clarify that. And yeah, exactly. I see your comment in the chat too. Like, comment, subscribe. I think that's true. But like I said, I think it's one step different about building a relationship, right? And so like Gary Vaynerchuk, for me, as a fan of his, I'm paying attention to what he does all the time. I had never thought about creating a video in response to something he does. I should think about that more because that is very trendy on YouTube. That's how their community engages with each other, right? And so even thinking again on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, those different tools that we have, like stitching, right? Or like responding directly from video with a video. Reaction videos are very popular on YouTube, right? So thinking about how those types of content frameworks can work. And then Tanya, is there any specific video creator or editor that you feel is easy to use? So yes, I can give you a few recommendations. I do want to just really, first and foremost say that I think using the YouTube app and getting really good at it is very similar to using the TikTok app or the Instagram app and getting really good at it. I think it's important to use the video tools that are built in and to get really comfortable with them, even if you're going to use other tools to advance the kind of content you're making. So, I don't think that you should not use other tools, but I do think you will get more comfortable using the tools that are built right into the system and feeling really good about those and then adding to that tool set. That's just my personal preference, but over the years of DIYing all this stuff, that's what I've learned. When I understand the app itself, the platform itself really well, then when I pull in other tools to use with it, I do much, much better. That being said, though, my favorite sort of video creator and editing tools, the first one is called Camtasia. I'm a huge fan, especially because I do educational videos, actually as part of what I sell as a product. And so a lot of those videos, I have to DIY them, but I want some video editing capabilities, but I'm not a videographer, so I need sort of a middle ground to work with. Camtasia is also great for doing all sorts of marketing content. So I'm a big fan. They're evolving alongside everybody else with different types of AI tools, but I think they're being thoughtful about it. They are a paid tool. You have to pay every year. I think it's around $200, but I've literally been using them for like 20 years. There's also a couple AI tools that I'm using. One is called Vizard, and I've been playing with that tool fairly frequently, and just testing out what it can do. It's called Vizard AI. I will make sure I share these when I send out the slide deck. I'll add them to the slide deck for sure. And I'll share them in the chat right now. But basically, these are tools where, you can sort of DIY video in different ways. You can take long form video and turn it into shorts. They're not perfect tools, but they are, I think, pretty powerful and interesting. There's another one called sorry, Synthesia, I think is how you say it. And essentially, I'm a big fan of this tool. I've been testing it. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. These are AI tools. Again, Camtasia is a tool by a company called TechSmith. I'll put that in the chat. You can Google them and get their website. So those are some of my favorites. There's plenty out there that I've used over the years that I really like, especially for marketing. If anybody else has ones they want to suggest, feel free. But yeah, I feel like there's so many different ones. I use Canva a lot still to create different reels and videos. I think Camtasia for me, if we're talking about traditional video editing and even putting yourself on camera, I think has been a really strong tool for me. But yeah, hopefully those help. I will actually include in the slide deck an extra slide with a list of video creation and editing tools. And I'll send that out along with the recording and the slide deck. Because I know that's super useful to folks. But overall, I don't see any other questions. So thank you all again for being here. Please, when you get that slide deck, you have all my personal contact information in there. Don't hesitate to always reach out to me and consider me a resource. And thanks so much, Colleen. I really appreciate it. We'll take all the healing vibes we can get. And Amy, yeah, use iMovie. It's funny, I will say I love iMovie. For some reason, I struggle with how big their files are. I feel like when I make videos in there, the files become like giant megabytes or gigabytes large. That's why I've typically used Camtasia. That seems to be, though, a little bit of a Macintosh problem overall. So when I use Camtasia for Mac, I get much bigger files. So I actually have a PC with my Camtasia on it, and I just feel like it creates leaner, simpler video files. But again, that's a long technical conversation, Amy. If you ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me by email. But again, I really appreciate, yeah, exactly. I feel like Apple computers, because they are created for designers and videographers and people like that to use, it's like they create these really high resolution files, which to me is awesome on one level, but difficult because a lot of times when I'm doing social media, I'm doing things for my website, I don't want these giant high resolution files. And if I'm not a real video editor, I have a hard time understanding all that goes into editing them down to a web ready version. So that's why I kind of like tools that have kind of that web ready approach built in, because I'm not probably putting many of my videos on the big screen anytime soon, right? So that's sort of where I think Macintosh, like iMovie being something they created. I mean, literally a filmmaker can use that tool, which I think is why you see kind of this issue with the size of the files. But again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any technical questions. I'm always glad to provide resources. In the meantime, again, thanks for all the good thoughts, all the positive energy. Happy Halloween to everyone. I hope you got to enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing you next month in December, where we are so excited to be bringing one of our friends and partners, Rachel from Yodel, to talk about event marketing. And I hope to see you on December 4th. Have a great day.